the little puppy's biggest victory. The old wooden sign creaked in the warm afternoon wind. Painted across it in large red letters were the words, "Puppies for sale." Cars rarely passed the dusty country road, but anyone who saw that sign would probably smile for a second and continue driving. Nobody knew that behind that fence was a tiny puppy who would soon change 2 lives forever. The summer afternoon was hot enough to melt butter. Farmer Ben stood outside his farmhouse, hammering the last nail into the wooden sign. Sweat rolled down his face while chickens wandered nearby, pecking at the dirt. He stepped back proudly and admired his work. Just then, he felt a small tug on his overalls. Farmer Ben looked down and saw a skinny little boy standing beside him. The boy had messy brown hair, dusty shoes, and bright, curious eyes filled with excitement. "Mister," the boy asked shyly, "can I buy one of your puppies?" Farmer Ben smiled kindly. "Well now," he replied, "these puppies come from very fine parents. They're smart dogs and cost quite a bit of money." The boy looked nervous for a moment. Then he reached deep into his pocket and slowly pulled out a handful of coins. He counted carefully while 1 nickel slipped into the mud. Quickly, he grabbed it and cleaned it on his shirt. Finally, he held the coins up proudly. "I got 39 cents, he said softly. "Is that enough to at least look at them?" Farmer Ben chuckled warmly. "Son, 39 cents is enough for a look." The boy's face immediately lit up with happiness. Farmer Ben turned toward the barn and gave a loud whistle. "Here, Dolly!" he shouted. Suddenly, barking exploded from inside the doghouse. Out came Dolly, a fluffy golden mother dog wagging her tail proudly. Behind her bounced 4 fat little puppies rolling down the ramp like furry potatoes. The little boy burst into laughter. One puppy crashed into another. One chased its own tail until it became dizzy and fell into a bucket of water. Another tripped over its own ears while trying to run. Farmer Ben laughed loudly. "That one there is Trouble," he joked while pointing at the puppy stuck inside the bucket. The little boy pressed his face against the fence, smiling so hard his cheeks hurt. His eyes sparkled with pure joy as the puppies barked and jumped around. But then he noticed movement inside the doghouse. Something much smaller was slowly trying to come outside. A tiny puppy appeared at the top of the ramp. Unlike the others, this puppy dragged one back leg awkwardly behind him. Step, hop, slide, step, hop, slide. The little puppy stumbled several times but kept trying to catch up with the others. The little boy's smile slowly disappeared as he watched carefully. The tiny pup finally reached the group and sat down, breathing heavily while wagging its tail hopefully. Without hesitation, the boy pointed directly at him. "I want that one," he said firmly. Farmer Ben blinked in surprise. "That little runt?" he asked. "Yes, sir," the boy answered immediately. Farmer Ben slowly knelt beside him. "Son," he said gently, "you don't want that puppy. He'll never run properly. He won't be able to play like the others." The boy stayed quiet while Farmer Ben continued speaking softly. "The veterinarian says he was born with a bad leg. He'll probably limp forever." For a few seconds, the little boy said nothing. Then he slowly stepped backward and rolled up one leg of his trousers. Farmer Ben suddenly froze. A heavy steel brace ran along the sides of the boy's leg, attached to a special shoe. The boy looked down shyly before speaking. "You see, sir," he whispered, "I don't run too well myself." Everything became silent for a moment. Even the puppies seemed to stop barking. The boy looked at the tiny puppy again and smiled softly. "He'll need someone who understands," he said quietly. Farmer Ben felt a lump rise in his throat. Before the boy could notice the tears forming in his eyes, he quickly cleared his throat. "Well?" Farmer Ben coughed softly. That puppy costs just as much as the others. The little boy nodded seriously. I'll pay for him, he replied. I can save more money every week if I have to. Farmer Ben stared silently at the boy. Most children always wanted the fastest puppy, the strongest puppy, or the prettiest puppy. But this boy wanted the one nobody else would choose. Suddenly, Farmer Ben remembered something painful from his own past. Years ago, he had badly injured his arm in an accident. During that time, many people laughed at him and treated him differently. Only his old dog Rusty stayed beside him every single day. Taking a deep breath, Farmer Ben smiled warmly. What's your name, son? Charlie, the boy answered. Well, Charlie, Farmer Ben said softly, I think that puppy already belongs to you. Charlie's eyes widened with excitement. Really? He asked. Really? Farmer Ben replied with a smile. Charlie carefully opened the gate and sat down on the grass. The tiny puppy slowly hobbled toward him. Then something amazing happened. The puppy climbed directly into Charlie's lap and instantly fell asleep like he already trusted him completely. Farmer Ben laughed softly. Looks like he chose you first. Charlie gently stroked the puppy's fur and smiled. I'll call him Lucky. Farmer Ben chuckled. Funny name. Most people would call him Unlucky. Charlie hugged the tiny dog tightly. Then most people are wrong, he whispered. Over the next few weeks, Charlie visited the farm every day after school. Lucky followed him everywhere, although sometimes following looked more like tumbling, rolling, and crashing into things. One afternoon, Lucky tried chasing a chicken, but accidentally ran straight into a bucket and got stuck inside it. Charlie laughed so hard he nearly fell over himself. Another day, Charlie threw a stick and told Lucky to fetch it. A few minutes later, Lucky proudly returned carrying Farmer Ben's boot instead. The next time, Lucky brought back a potato. Once, he somehow dragged a pair of underwear from the clothesline and proudly dropped them in front of Charlie. Farmer Ben shouted dramatically, "That dog's either a genius or a criminal." For the first time in years, Charlie laughed freely without worrying about his leg brace. Somehow, Lucky made him feel normal. But not everyone in town was kind. One afternoon, Charlie and Lucky walked slowly through the market when a group of older boys saw them. "Look!" one bully shouted. "The broken boy and his broken dog!" The others burst into cruel laughter. Charlie looked down quietly while the boys continued mocking him. "Maybe the dog needs a metal leg too," one boy sneered. Suddenly, Lucky growled softly. Then, before Charlie could stop him, the tiny puppy charged toward the bullies. Well, it looked more like a bouncing potato than a fierce attack. One bully stepped backward directly into a giant mud puddle. Splash! Mud flew everywhere while the other boys burst into laughter. Another bully tripped over a bicycle and crashed into a fruit cart. Apples rolled across the street while Lucky barked proudly like a tiny hero. Charlie laughed so hard, tears rolled down his cheeks. The bullies stormed away, covered in mud and embarrassment. Months later, the annual village fair finally arrived. Every year, the town held a big dog race with a shiny gold trophy for the winner. Farmer Ben joked, "Maybe Lucky should enter the race too." Charlie laughed at first, but then he looked at Lucky, wagging his tail confidently. "You know what?" Charlie smiled. "Let's do it." The entire town burst into laughter when they saw Lucky standing beside the giant racing dogs. "That dog can barely walk," someone shouted. Charlie suddenly felt nervous. He knelt beside Lucky and whispered, "We don't have to win. Just try your best." Lucky licked his hand happily. The whistle blew and the race began. The large dogs exploded forward while Lucky stumbled behind them. The crowd laughed loudly. But halfway through the race, chaos suddenly erupted. A goat escaped nearby and ran across the track. Dogs barked wildly. One bulldog stopped to eat sausages from a food stand, while another chased butterflies instead of racing. Meanwhile, Lucky kept moving steadily forward. Hop, slide, hop, slide. Slowly the crowd stopped laughing and started cheering instead. "Come on, Lucky!" people shouted excitedly. Near the finish line, only one dog remained ahead, but suddenly that dog stopped to scratch its ear. Lucky slowly passed him. Hop, slide, hop, slide. Then, against all odds, Lucky crossed the finish line first. For one silent second, nobody could believe what they had just seen. Then the entire fair exploded into cheers louder than thunder. Charlie hugged Lucky tightly while tears rolled down his face. Farmer Ben wiped his eyes proudly and laughed. That night, Charlie sat under the stars, with Lucky sleeping peacefully beside him. "Before I met you," Charlie whispered softly, "I used to hate my leg. But now I think maybe being different isn't so bad." Years later, people still remembered the story of the little boy and the limping puppy. Not because they won a race, but because they taught everyone an important lesson. The world often ignores people who are different, weak, or slow. But sometimes the people who struggle the most understand love the deepest. The moral of the story is simple. Never judge someone by their weakness. True friendship and kindness come from understanding each other's pain. Being different does not make someone less valuable. Sometimes it makes them truly special.